welcome to TSP Weekly, your tech startup podcast for June the 22nd. My name's Stephen Campbell. I'm here with Amaris Gerson, my co-host.
Good morning, Stephen.
Hey, Amaris, how are you?
You're afraid of me today.
We're really close today here on the power couch.
Yeah, it's a fancy couch.
We're joined today by Josh Hillis with the Distillery Labs. How are you,
Wow,
Josh?
you enunciated well on that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did. You did a great job.
Distillery Labs.
Thank you. Josh, how's your enunciation today? Have you practiced anything?
Nothing. No.
Nothing?
Got one coffee in, so hopefully that'll get me through.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm going to be drinking my coffee during the podcast, so I hope you don't mind. We're casual.
Absolutely.
So give us the pitch. What's the Distillery Labs? What are we distilling? Is it moonshine or?
Hopefully, at some point. But the idea behind Distillery Labs was helping small companies continue to grow through the community. So we've got great incubation cycles. We have awesome services that kind of get a company off the ground. But what often we were seeing, at least over the last 5 years, is companies jumping into that long-term space a little too soon. Most of us don't have the visibility to know whether we'll be here for 2 years, let alone 5. So when you're locking yourself into something like that, it changes the, somewhat of the dynamic around how you run your business because you're always worrying about that overhead. So we look at ourselves as kind of like a greenhouse between that startup period to the long-term success of a business. So giving people flexible timeframes here, reasonable lease rates, and just working with them to make sure that they can be successful is basically what Distillery Labs has been all about since day one. So
Lots of people that need that service here for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
When was day one?
Day one, we started here. We took possession of this building mid-October last year. But the process itself started about 4 years ago when I was working in the tannery. So we were already identifying that was a need here locally, but there just wasn't the right space. So I looked at me and the team too, at one point, we're looking at probably 6 different locations over the last 4 years. And then eventually got super lucky, found this space here through our friends at the city who were really, really supportive, City of Waterloo, pardon me. Supportive of what we were trying to accomplish up here and create another little hub that kind of sits between what's happening in downtown Kitchener, which is amazing, and everything that happens in and around the universities.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. So you mentioned the team a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So this is interesting. So things have kind of changed recently.
We could sense something.
So we've had a small change. So we started out with a few of us. Now it's primarily me just running the day-to-day as well as running the business. So that's just like any startup. You're still trying to figure out dynamics. You're still trying to figure out what time can be given when you're already running your other businesses. So I've got 2 other companies with a 3rd one on the way, plus this, and my other partners also had other things on the side. So at a certain point, they realized that they just couldn't handle everything together, and it all came kind of to me. So now, as of only a few weeks ago, it's all on my shoulders.
You can do it. I believe in you.
Yeah.
But the beginning, you had everyone a part of that.
Sure.
I was here before you opened, and you guys were painting and putting stuff on the floor and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a full team effort at the beginning, and
Absolutely,
then just the day-to-day stuff, that is what is a little bit harder.
Sure.
The excitement at the beginning is easy.
Just like just starting up a company, you get so excited about what the product might be. So we were here countless hours from like the 15th of October through to our deadline of being in a pretty state for people to be able to come in for the first hacker nest that we had in the space. So it was a huge success, but we were literally finishing the last toilet, like installing the last toilet. Yeah. Draft lines were just working, so everything kind of came together. It was kind of like Extreme Home Makeover, just Distillery Labs edition.
That's a common story, whether it's the Never Forget photo, their first event. He was like 2 hours before, the printer didn't work, and all the scrambling. And
well, I know I was here, I want to say like 4 days before Hacker Nest, and you were still painting walls and still putting up stickers. The day of, there was like branding going up. It was awesome, but you had a full team for that, and it's been, what, a year and a half, almost 2 years? A year?
No.
Good. October, that's no.
October, no, that's not.
Less than a year.
We're about 8 months, 9 months.
Yeah.
So it has come a long way in that short period of time, and it came a very long way in that first 4 weeks too. So, but we were lucky because we had friends and family and people that are willing to come in and help us try and make this thing work. We already had our first 2 tenants move in like November 1st. So it took us about 3.5 months to fill the space, which was a lot faster than we expected, but it was a happy accident. And so when you look at that whole process, we're still learning. Like, we were bootstrapped just like any other startup company. Had to do the sweat equity ourselves, had to do the work ourselves, had to troubleshoot through, burst pipes in the wintertime and pipes bursting out in the warehouse in the wintertime. So I've seen a lot of crap in the last little while. But they're all great learning experiences, especially going forward, where we probably in the next 12 months have to be into a new location. So we're already working on that next spot uptown.
Yeah, so what is the deal? What is this space originally?
Oh, so
I know what it is, but tell everyone else.
Good question.
Yeah, so this is the old Brick Brewery building. So Brick was the first real microbrewer here in Canada, and Jim Brickman created that back in the early 80s. So after traveling around the Eastern Europe and Europe to try and really understand how to brew really good beer, came back here and called up the government and said, I want to start a brewery. But there was lots of stipulations that didn't allow for microbrews. So he started to lobby them for changes and continued to build his brewery at the same time. So one of my favorite stories from Jim was him with that very first 000001 permit for brewing in Canada.
That's awesome.
Standing out front of the building out here at King Street in November with his hand or the permit over his head, and gust of wind takes it. So he's in a photo op, the thing goes flying out onto King Street. Bus runs over it. He runs after the bus, eventually catches it at King and William, just up the street there, was able to peel it back, and it still has a tire track across that
awesome.
first permit. So
Canadian.
It was like one of the first startup stories, and that's kind of how we look at this is there's lots of cool opportunities. Even when we were exploring other opportunities like the Seagram's Museum, those were one of the first startups or first, entrepreneurs of this region and trying to carry on that type of mentality here.
And obviously Brick has expanded and they're doing very well, so they've moved out to a bigger space, but they've left you with this sort of shell of a brewery. So
Exactly.
What the camera can't see and what no one else really knows is that behind those fancy doors is a scary fridge. And behind that scary door over there is a giant warehouse. That you don't touch because they're just too scary.
It's it's not a space that we can really utilize except for minor amount of storage. So we focus primarily on this space. This main floor where we're sitting right now is the old retail section. So this is where the beer was bought previously, and people still come in to this day trying to find beer from us. And then the space beside us is the bar space. So that was where the lounge was. That's where they used to do tastings, or you would come in and do a very minor tour just because you could drink for a couple hours for about $5, $10 type of thing. So we've kept the taps online because we like to have events in here, so it's just another way for us to drive revenue for the business, but also a great way to kind of add some fun for the space with our tenants, because our tenants will come down and we'll have pints and talk about our problems and try and help each other out.
So where are the companies located in here?
So of the 3 floors that we have here, they're on the top 2 floors. Okay. So it's a different scenario when you're having to come into a space that's already built. So we're trying to figure out, okay, you've got 4 people you can fit in here. This is probably a good space for you. And it was just a matter of kind of fitting people in the spaces that would work for them. Into our next space, it'll be more designed based on what we've learned here and how we think things will move forward in the future. But it'll be nice to have something built for us versus having to kind of accommodate ourselves in a space that was already existing.
What have you learned? What have you seen that, like, as the team grows from 2 to 4 to 6, or what's spatial, or is there anything interesting? It
depends on where these people it depends on where these companies come from, because with Velocity's done a really good job on maximizing space. So a lot of these companies will jam as many people as they can into an office that maybe would be comfortable at 3 or 4, and they might have 6. So they're trying to maximize their space, which is smart, and that's also maximizing their dollars versus doing individual desk costs, because we have varying degrees of how you can get involved in the space. So what we're seeing is we're already starting to see some companies roll out, which is awesome. Which is the whole point. You could be here for a year or less or more. It really doesn't matter. If you need to contract a bit and restructure yourselves, we're here to help them do that too.
Right.
But when you're ready to move on to that space on your own, we're happy to see you move off into the big bad world on your own, and then see new people, new blood roll into the space too. So
great. So that clearly shows that this is a really useful thing in the community. But what has been sort of fuel that got you there? Or I'm trying to do that little point on there, because you glossed over a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, so market validation we can't really do with you because you're obviously full, right? Like,
it
worked.
He knew it was a thing. You already said it.
Kind of self-validated it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was 4 years. I remember looking at a house down on Queen Street that's still for sale, like, to this day. Beautiful spot. Would have been a great little kind of startup house, but a little bit more expensive. Couldn't really get the buy-in that we were hoping for. And there wasn't at that point as many kind of companies that were through that second and third year type scenario where they've got a little better understanding of where their long-term goals were. So we went there and we looked at 305 King. We've bounced all around the city to try and find the right space. And we were really stoked about the other space that we were considering. But that just didn't work out. So this came to us by fluke and just by utilizing our own networks. That's how we were able to fill the space.
And you have a fairly large network. I mean, I was saying earlier that I see you at every event. Yeah. And I go to a lot of events, but you're at more than I am.
I've been really good at networking in this area since the beginning. But I like to meet people, like to learn about what they're working on, and then see if there's any way to utilize my network to help people out. And that's just kind of what I do because I love to do that stuff. Yep. And everything else kind of falls into place after that. And
so what has sort of helped you get to this point? I mean, how did you become an entrepreneur? Was that through school? Was that through life?
Just through life. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial home anyway. So my father owns a company in Cambridge that's been around for almost 30 years. But I started when I was like 8 with 6 paper routes, and I hired my 3 younger brothers to work for me. I remember taking out an insurance policy on myself just in case anything ever happened. My mom thought it was ridiculous. It was just accidental, if you can't do your job. So I ended up breaking my elbow.
Errors and omissions.
So I broke my elbow, and so this thing paid out to me, which was amazing. So my brothers got paid. I got paid. I got to sit on my ass for 6 weeks. Wow. And then bought my first TV. So it was just one of those funny little fluke things. But
that's awesome.
But that rolled into starting working for my dad when I was 10. Okay. So me and my brother started really early because he had a factory. So if we could come in and clean up on weekends, that was where we got started. So.
But you got to see really what that entrepreneurial life was.
Well, I started right from the bottom, cleaning toilets through to national accounts manager when I left the company. So.
Wow.
And now you're at the top. You get to install toilets.
It goes right back to it again, right? I still clean the toilets here too periodically. You got to do whatever you got to do.
Can you give us a quick glimpse of some of the other things that you're involved in? Do you have anything else you can talk about, your other projects?
Sure. The original plan, actually, so funny enough, when I moved to this area, it was to hopefully take a job with Brick to manage this space, retail space, and their lounge space.
What a coinky-dink.
That was the weird part. So they ended up not hiring at all for the position. I think that was when they were looking at selling the space and combining everything over to their location across from Binghamton's.
Right. Yep.
So it forced me to take my first company, Pair Mobile, which was all about connective products. It was like IoT stuff before it really became a buzzword, which then rolled into another product called Flykyt, which we're just kind of finalizing now. And that's just a quick file share product where I can touch and hold my screen and share quickly to your device.
Okay.
And we're talking larger files, bigger than what email can handle and bigger and a lot faster than what Dropbox or Box can do. So those are 2. And then out of the necessity of what we have here, I've never had to manage a parking lot in my life. So and I have a nearly photographic memory, so I remember most people's cars, but when new ones come in or they switch their cars up, it's kind of hard to keep track of. So now we're building a parking related app that will help us very simply just walk through, scan, and get the thumbs up, thumbs down on who's in the space. And then we can automatically print to a printer a warning, or if we want to, we can actually give out tickets, but that's not really the point. It's just to try and make sure we use our space for our people. But now
what
I
would
can
a parking
sell
ticket from the Distillery Labs look like?
I don't know.
It'll be a face like this.
It will be it'll be Amaris. Yeah.
I think you're onto something there.
I will totally do that. That's a dream. I've always wanted to be a bylaw officer.
There you go. So we can help you achieve that in a slightly different way.
Bylaw officer.
We can get a life-size cutout with her hands on her hips and just put
and
it
the finger out
front.
like this.
Yeah, the finger,
it's scary. But so those are the things we're working on. But I'd still manage all the day-to-day stuff here. So But
you're
now
saying we. Who's the
we?
It's still we. I hate saying I.
But the other projects you're working on, that is other people.
Yeah. So as far as development, because I've never been a developer, it's always about trying to find talented people to work with. And as we roll into some of those other questions into it, I can explain things that have happened that were great learning experiences, but not necessarily positive going forward. But that's part of the whole startup experience. Is you're going to screw stuff up.
Yep.
And you're going to learn from it. And then once you learn from it, you're going to try and not do it the same way the next time. Or whatever you learn, it's going to help you change the value of how you bring people on or how you scale them into your product.
There's nothing like making the same mistake twice, but just with a different flavor.
Yeah.
Josh, we're going to talk about the 3x3 now. So your 3 wins, losses, and glimpses of the future. So give us some 3 wins.
3 wins. That's a good question. Just in general across life, or are we talking startup life?
No, we're talking specifically Distillery Labs. So what were some big wins? Obviously, you got this space. That's clearly...
Yeah, even just getting the product to this point was a big win because people are never too sure about a concept until a concept comes to fruition. So that's just like any product. You can talk about what a product will look like, but until people see it, like even with Flykyt, it's been primarily just us looking at the product. once you get new eyes on it, people realize now it's real. So that was a big win. So getting a product that actually had some traction as quickly as we had, that was definitely a big win.
You got tenants in pretty much instantly.
Exactly. Yeah. And even just the way that this was all set up was a huge win. So the partnership with the building owners, helping and participating in certain ways, and even just the opportunity to utilize their space, that was a massive win for us as well. Yep. And then I think it feels like there's lots. I can think of lots of other non-wins, but
we'll get there.
But
you've had a lot of successes, definitely.
Sure.
I mean, the fact that you have such a connected network of people that has allowed you to get this space, get people in this space,
have sponsors for this space.
Yeah, true. Yeah, even sponsorships too. Like that's a big win because they're trusting that there's something here worthwhile and worth putting some dollars into to support what we're trying to do long term. So now that we've been able to prove that will carry itself into our next space, because the next space is going to be bigger and brighter and naturally more expensive. So we have to look at how do we cover those costs, ongoing, and our rental rates will change a bit too, but we're still keeping ourselves below certain kind of like thresholds based on what other people charge for similar types of spaces, with still supporting the community.
And what I was going to say is that crap, I forgot, but
I smacked my lips and I just disturbed you.
I got Brandon in his sunglasses over there, and I just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, Oak and Rumble is looking really cool today.
Talking about network, we're talking about filling the space quick.
I just saw that Win is expanding the Waterloo Innovation Network, and they had something about 1 gigabyte per second internet speed at their new location. So that was kind of cool, I thought.
Well, it'd be interesting because if it's fiber optic, that's huge because it's continual. We have, at our space right now, we're only throttled up to about 200 megabytes per second. So we get great, like people have been really surprised at how great the internet is here, but it's Wi-Fi, it's direct Wi-Fi. So we're getting a signal beamed to us from a jump off point in North Waterloo on top of one of the student residences there. But with minor interruptions with weather, for the most part, it's been pretty spectacular, and we can ramp up to a gig. So even with companies in our building that do 4K video and 4K immersive VR, they're still finding that that's actually pretty solid for what they need. So
those are cool wins.
I'm still trying to remember what I was going to say.
You can always just sprinkle it in there somewhere else.
So let's talk about some losses then. You want to move
we
on?
can talk about losses.
If you remember, we'll come back to it. But.
Well, no, I was just talking about how he's doing well, whatever.
Yeah,
Yes.
no question.
So some losses.
What's some Distillery Labs losses?
Some bumps in the road.
And don't think of them as straight up losses, but some are like some pivots or some lessons learned.
Well, even early, I mean, partnerships are always difficult too. So even when you lose partners, you learn from that experience. So it's all about trying to identify what each person brings to it, what that value is worth, how do you associate equity to it. Those are things we were kind of glazing over initially because we were just so excited to get the product off the ground. So that was something that a major learning experience for all of us anyway. Not getting the Seagram's building was huge because we had already had probably 30 companies signed up to move into that space with us. So we've got between 15 and 20 companies here, but that's because some groups have multiple companies underneath the same umbrella. Even myself, like I could say there's 3 companies here based on what I've got. Over there, we were already at 30, and that was without any additional companies. So losing that space, especially in the way we did, because we were very well backed by a large Canadian family with the potential of trying to purchase the product, just didn't work out because we were an unknown commodity. So naturally, not-for-profits like CIGI are looking for a little more stability, which we totally understand, and it was a big loss for us, but it ultimately brought us this space. So it all worked out in the end.
Okay, and then that transition. I mean, you've kind of alluded to it, but that loss of your partners has definitely taught you some things.
Sure.
You can count that as one?
That's kind of rolled into that. So understanding what people can do and what their focus will be, or if they're just going to be totally hands off, like that's, trying to identify whether you're a silent or active partner. That was just something that wasn't really hit in the initial stages. And we did all we could to get the space up together, like running up together, which was great. And then we were all hands on deck for that stuff. It's just a matter how do you keep engagement after that, and is it the right engagement for the right people? So
with your partnership, did you guys do like a bunch of paperwork and have roles designated and hours and expectations and mission statements and all that?
Yeah, to a certain extent, of course. But those things can be modified just like your job role in any new startup would be too. So once you start to identify who can do what and just kind of jumping in and getting it done, then sometimes those expectations were change. So naturally it just evolves like the business does itself. So,
but it was much more paperwork and not just handshake and understanding.
Oh, sure.
Stuff.
Yeah. Everything was in place. So we made sure that we were on the right foot going forward and then just adjusting things as needed ongoing.
I feel like that's 2 losses, but I feel like a third one could be any structural issues you've had to deal with, any building issues you've had to deal with that you didn't expect?
Yeah.
Open a door and 100 bats fly out at you.
Oh, I mean, it's an old building, and it's an old building that used to have, edible products in it. So you naturally will have issues with, like when we first started, we were starting to see, mice and rats in the warehouse, which really doesn't affect us, but that's still something that you worry about coming into the building. So that was a big concern for me.
I think it affects Amaris. Yeah. Just thinking about it, actually.
No, I like it. I want to go see them.
No, thankfully we don't have any issues with them anymore, but that's still something you don't expect to see. We were having issues with our fire alarm kept going off, and I kept resetting it and thought everything was fine, but what we learned was when I went down into the basement, which normally would be very hot. So it's because they used to have effluents and water treatment down there, plus some reduction. It was really warm in there, so they actually had to have exhaust fans pull heat out. But at this point, there's nothing down there. There's no heat being created, so it got really cold. And when we hit some of our lowest temperatures over the winter, small little pipe about this big in the fire suppression system froze, which is already bad enough. But it warmed up just enough so it could what's the expansion and contraction had happened. Yeah. Popped the pipe, and so I walked down and I could hear what sounded like a shower, and I'm like, well, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And I look in and there's just this little pipe just shooting out, and that's what was causing the issue. So it was telling everything that there was some sort of loss of water, so fire alarm kept going on. So fix that just in time to have another pipe in the warehouse burst and start pouring water through the basement. So it was just like one thing after
You're wearing the boots and the overalls anyway.
Yeah. Not that day. That was just maybe winter boots, but that was about it.
But that's the reality of, like, I mean, often we're talking to companies that have an app or a piece of software.
Yeah.
But your product is a physical space.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some other things that go with that, but you've got a physical space, which, I mean, I've heard you talk about other issues.
Yeah.
The space.
Yeah. Well, it's when it's tangible, it's different.
Yeah.
So, and when it's something that's nearly a century old, you're dealing with all those old problems and things that have been kind of added on. So even with our AC going down recently, we couldn't figure out what the issue was, but it was roasting up in that top floor where the majority of the people are. So finally figured a workaround that wouldn't be extremely expensive, and now it's perfect up there. Okay. So there's things like that happen all the time, but it's just usually a little more minor scale, but those are some of the big ones that kind of catch you off guard.
Yeah, well, those are good stories. They weren't security related.
No.
Nobody was killed or broken into or
not
anything
yet.
like that. So.
Not yet. There's always time.
Yeah.
Well, we thought we would be smart. We actually had an event here for a friend's engagement party, and there was so much food still left over, and it was the winter time. I thought, you know what? This is the end of night, and I'm like, this is just going to be so much easier. I'll just turn off the heat, and we'll just let this room get cold, and it'll be like a fridge, and it was. But it took 2 days to heat the room back up to where the normal temperature should have been. So it seems like a good idea at the time, but in hindsight, you realize that's not so smart.
Yep, we all have those moments.
Yeah.
Or most of us do.
Yeah.
I never do.
Weekly. Yeah.
Yes.
What on the flip side of that? What are some things you're looking for the future? What are the goals of Distillery Labs? We've kind of alluded at a couple of them, but
You're looking for a new space?
Yeah, so we're looking for a new space. So we've gotten into discussions about one uptown Waterloo right now. So we're just trying to figure out whether the logistics and the monies will work well in there.
What happens to this space?
So in the next 12 months, approximately, our landlords, HIP and Malua, will take the space and repurpose part of the building to be some sort of probably restaurant feature. They're not quite sure yet. It could be a brew pub, which would be cool. But there is proposed building above here. So they're looking at doing apartment units up to 20 floors potentially here. To add some, additional like density for apartments here in the uptown core. So once they start breaking ground here, then we've got to be out. So we're just trying to make sure the timing works, that they'll be able to move in here and start to excavate and do the work that they need to do and be into a new space without any real issues.
Really trying hard not to use my vertical growth joke again, because I used it 2 weeks ago.
Because you already used it, yeah.
So just wanted to mention that.
So now I forget again.
I got you again. And then
I'm having trouble today. I didn't have breakfast. No, the the length of time that you have this is a bit dependent on whether they get approval to build. Is that?
Well, I mean, this is always a short-term thing. So this was I guess a pilot that had a very finite opportunity. So it was up to 2 years potentially. We always knew it would be less based on the conversation that we were having with our partners that own the space, and so we had to make sure that we were starting to plan ahead. And in construction or any sort of building, you need to give yourself plenty of time to try and get something done. Yep. So if we found a place that was already ready to go, that'd be amazing. But there's a very limited amount of product uptown Waterloo, and that's where we want to stay, because I think that's our biggest opportunity to have an impact and create another little cluster within the region. Mm-hmm. So we have to be always on the lookout for cool spots. There are some other places that may be available in the next few years, but they're not available now. So we have to look at where can we be for the next 3 to 5 minimum, and what can we do long term. So we're already thinking about bigger opportunities long term, and how to be. You end up becoming somewhat of a landlord, but the short term landlord between the long term landlord.
Well, and it's not just landlord; it's a bit of advice and a bit of connections.
It's collaboration altogether. So when we first started having kind of our tenants come down and have a few beers and meet each other, there was already opportunities for people to learn from other people's experiences, mistakes, all that kind of stuff, or find opportunities to work together too. So it's brought together myself, my friends from Beagle, and my friends from Live App that will be building the parking app together, because Kian had the concept himself, I had the need in the back lot, and Live App has the ability to build it for us. So now there's 3 companies within the space that are now getting to work together on a project because of the need that we had with Distillery Labs. So
that's awesome. And you guys have been supportive of the podcast, letting us hang out here. And
absolutely.
We're here a lot.
Which is awesome. So thanks for that.
I'm glad you guys have been here. This is cool to see, and it's fun to participate in too. So.
And we also we have a monthly poker game that one of your tenants organizes that sometimes has different companies that...
Exactly. So we try to support our tenants too. So being a tenant here, you get the use of the space. So you may as well, find ways to appreciate your customers or your teams or whatever you need to do. That way, you're continuing that kind of positive reinforcement of the people that you're working with.
You also had events here on not just for your tenants, but you had that Gene thing.
Oh yeah, well that was just a fluke, but a friend from LA who is a Canadian fashion designer wanted to do a pop-up shop. So we did a pop-up shop here over a weekend, and even though it wasn't necessarily as crazy busy as we'd hoped, it was still a great learning experience too. So
what's a pop-up shop? Like last week was Tickle Trunk. I didn't know what that was. Now it's a pop-up thingy.
You're basically we turned this space here that we're sitting in right now into basically a clothing store. So we got racks, we have change rooms, you have payment at the front, we have bank machines. So it was all set up, music pumping, a DJ one of the days too. So it's just a way to try and encourage new
DJ. Yeah. Yes, I'd like some socks.
Yeah. Well, the stuff that we were selling
sometimes you make yourself sound really old.
I'm really old. Yeah, you're welcome.
We were lucky though, but it was really cool product, and it forced me to go back to my shipping receiving days when I had to pull off like 22 skids of gear off of a truck one day.
I take it there weren't any socks on the skids.
There's no socks. Yeah. No, I don't think he does designer socks, but hey, that's where this shirt's from. That's
nice.
Pumping their product a little bit, but yeah. So it's you can put anything in here. It's really pretty flexible. So we've had some interest in potentially turning this back into office space, or turning it into an office space for some companies. Because with 2 VR companies already in the space, we had a third from Detroit interested in trying to find a location locally for engineering. So we're totally open with what the opportunities are, trying to fit a space to the people that are coming in. So
if he does that, what will we do?
We'll follow him.
No, I mean little space. Oh,
yeah, we're good. Yeah. It's always a spot. We'll go in the warehouse and we'll show them what it's all about.
Yeah, I can't wait. Josh, tell us a little bit about your hashtag Startup Crush.
It's so hard to say. There's so many cool things that are going on, and whether
it's
local or international.
Here, I know, so
exactly. I can't play favorites.
All of them upstairs.
Oh,
and
they're
then...
all great. Yeah. You know what? I don't say a crush. I can't even say their name yet, but there's a product that's coming together right now that I've become part of the team of just like advisors on, that is taking a look at an industry that's so stodgy and hasn't really had any major innovation except for like minor differences.
It's got to be insurance.
I was thinking dentistry.
Surprisingly not.
Financial.
No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But so I'll keep it super vague, but these guys are already working in the industry and saw an opportunity to basically cut out a massive chunk of just I don't know, just a ridiculous way of doing business, but it's been that way for so long. So it's very people derived. It's very laborious. And if you can take that chunk out and start to make things simpler, and then you optimize systems around it, it has a huge impact. And I think that this, I mean, I hate to put it out there too soon, but it's got a huge potential. So
this is our first stealth secret crush.
It's a mystery
like
company.
We'll be able to talk about it as it starts to roll out a little bit further, but they basically have two products based on their knowledge of the industry already. And when combining those together with a third feature, it's multi-revenue based.
It's so vague. I like it, but I think I know who he's talking about.
I don't know.
I feel like I once had beers.
Well, this is the interesting is that these guys have, unless you met them last week.
Oh, no.
They don't really come out to anything, so there you go.
Oh, wow.
So super
This
stealthy.
is awesome.
The mystery ensues.
So we'll be able to, hopefully at some point in the next 12 months, be able to have a conversation about this, and I'll be able to explain who they are, and hopefully about that point they're launched, and you can see how that product has changed in the industry.
Yeah.
So
We'll drag them out to some events.
Who are you crushing on?
I got to go with my own employer, Grobo, right now.
Yeah.
We just moved in the Velocity from the jungle to the garage.
Yeah.
So we're by the window now, which is fun.
Nice.
But we're almost ready to do our pre-launch in a couple weeks.
That's exciting.
So yeah, really excited about that. So it's all
I
hands
saw
on
an
deck.
interesting company just recently after watching some Vice Channel stuff. That is hydroponics for cannabis growth, and it's a product called Leaf, and it came out of an accelerator. So I don't know if I would figure.
Yeah, they're out of San Francisco.
Yeah, so they went through the Boulder canopy project there. I just thought that was an interesting product too.
Yeah, so
obviously
Boulder,
very specialized.
There's a whole incubator based just on cannabis startups and products and stuff.
Crazy.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
How about you, Amaris? Who's your startup crush this week?
Crap. I have no idea.
Don't have one?
I'm sure I do. You know what? Actually, the Fierce Founders program. It's not a startup, but I really like that program. I'm going to butcher the description of it, but it's basically, I believe, a 6-week program where they bring in. They have a ton of applications for the program, and it's companies that are run by women, Fierce Founders, and they are part of this boot camp.
And we're going to reach out and speak to some of them. A couple
Well, I
of
already
them
did
we
reach out,
recognize.
but yeah.
To the actual companies.
Yeah,
We've
of
spoken
course,
to the organizer.
Yeah, so it's run out of Communitech. It's run by Danielle Graham, and she's fantastic, and that program's fantastic. So we'll talk more about that, but that's what I like right now. So it's not a startup so much; it's just a cool program.
Yeah.
So I would add to that.
Yeah.
Another crush is a product called Bridesmaid, which is
Yeah,
part of that
it's part of that. Yeah.
So being I was just recently part of like a term of Laurie Launchpad mentorship, and she came out of that product. Her story is awesome. So if you get an opportunity to chat with Mallory, do it, because it's some brilliance there that would just kind of. There's some planned, some accidental, but she's really come a long way in a very short period of time. I thought it was one of the most impressive that came out of that.
There's a couple companies on there that I have heard of and have talked to before, and I'm excited to talk to them.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of talking to Brilliance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. We'll check that out.
You got to compensate for yourself.
Well, so yeah, gotta do it somehow. So then let's do our wrap up. How do we find you? How do we stalk you? Do Distillery Labs have a website?
Yeah, we do. DistilleryLabs.ca. I mean, we really don't have too much there right now because with the transition of everything, I haven't had a chance to focus on it. But you can get in touch with us at info@DistilleryLabs.ca. We are on Instagram as well at Distillery Labs. We don't tweet all that much.
Okay.
I do have at Distillery Labs at Twitter as well. So there's lots of ways to get in touch, and also through my personal stuff is probably just as easy to connect with me too. So
Okay. Awesome. Who do we have on next week? We're trying to get Sortable on next week, right?
I think we're good to go. Didn't he respond and say we're going?
Yeah, we were playing with dates because Chris is so busy, but I think we're on for Thursday morning, I believe. So, So
right.
Sortable next week, that'll be fun.
We will. Yeah, we like them.
Yeah, that will be fun. So that's it for this episode of TSP Weekly, or your Tech Startup Podcast. My name is Stephen Campbell for Amaris, Gerson, and Josh Hillis with Distillery Labs. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.